Hey everyone, Power to Heal here, and today we got a bit of a different topic than we've been talking about recently. So we've been doing a lot of class rune reviews for all the healers, and this is not going to be explicitly a healer related video. It's kind of going to be a more general video, one of the ones I've been promising, and we're basically going to be tackling this idea that I've seen posted a lot on Reddit and kind of perpetuated throughout the community that it would have been essentially impossible to deliver on Classic Plus in the way the community wants because the community doesn't have like a cohesive, singular vision of what Classic Plus is, and we can't really quantify exactly what we want it to be. So therefore, nothing that Blizzard would have done would have met that expectation, and therefore there always would have been disappointment. And this is basically in response to some of the backlash that Season of Discovery got from some of the people that are more skeptical about the season. Right, it's basically just saying to those people you guys wouldn't have been happy regardless of how it rolled out. So even though it's rolling out like this, that's not really relevant. If it wouldn't have rolled out exactly how you wanted it, then you'd be unhappy. And I think that is mostly complete bullshit, I will say, to be honest. Obviously, there's little strains of truth in there, right? Where there's no way that, every person's vision of Classic Plus is going to be the same down to every little minor detail that may get added or removed to something like Classic Plus. So in that respect, they're somewhat correct, but I think it's a bit dishonest, and it's kind of misrepresenting. It's straw manning the argument of it's straw manning the people who are upset that Classic Plus, that Season of Discovery is kind of the Classic Plus that we got instead of something else that they had in mind, because their argument I don't think would hinge upon it needing to conform to exactly their standards. They just think that Season of Discovery is a rather far departure from what they had in mind. So we're going to get into that, and I think that the best way to kind of go about dismantling that claim is, first we need to establish the kind of how could I put forth an argument that there was kind of a coherent vision for Classic Plus and what people wanted, right? What would be the evidence of that? And I think basically you can do that with kind of making a priority system of a priority of what people wanted to see into the game. Now, obviously, I can't really go through and provide actual evidence of this, right? In the sense that even if I went through and I screenshotted all the stuff I saw on Reddit, right? Reddit is still a small portion of the community. Even if I go into Discords and look for stuff there, that's still a small portion of the community. All these different places in the community are all kind of fractured, right? And so I can't give you a solid argument of oh, well, I know that 80% of the players wanted this in the game and 70% wanted this in the game. But I think based on just reading popular sentiment from the forums, from Reddit, from Discords and the you can kind of begin to piece together what is the the main things that people want out of something like Classic Plus. And so I'll be highlighting what I think those things are in order here. And it's really just I think two things that are probably primary, and then the rest of the stuff is kind of it doesn't matter so much about the actual details there, right? And I think that just establishing that in itself will be a pretty strong case, because it's already kind of going against this narrative that everything would need to align with what any individual's conception of what they want Classic Plus to be. It's what I'm basically going to argue for is that, if you touch upon those two things, you probably would have fell into the bucket that most people would be in terms of stuff that they're thinking about for Classic Plus, wanting for Classic Plus, desiring, etc. So we'll kind of get into those, and then I want to talk about the concerns with the people who are kind of like maybe not so excited for Season of Discovery, like their concerns for the season, and like why they would have preferred something like Classic Plus to Season of Discovery. So I think we'll start with like the strongest, and then we'll go to like the weakest. There's only going to be two main points here, but the strongest point, I think, and like the thing that most people wanted when you talk about Classic Plus is just a continuation of the game post Naxx. I think that's by and large, when you look at what people are saying on forums, on Discord, on Reddit, that is really the thing that most people are driving at, is they want some form of progression after Naxx. And it seems like they want it to be, most of what I've seen that would suggest that they want it to be what they call, I guess, like a lateral progression as opposed to vertical progression, right? So like they don't want to raise the level cap to 70 like in the TBC and have another TBC spin-off essentially. And it's actually funny because when information about Classic from BlizzCon was allegedly leaked, it was like, what, a couple months before BlizzCon or something like that? I think one of the things that was originally leaked was that there was going to be essentially a new expansion, and it was going to be level 70. And it was gonna, they mentioned like some of the iconic raids, and there was like a rumor that kind of got started at the time, like probably like a couple weeks out from BlizzCon, like 3 weeks out or something like that, where people were saying that there was going to be like a flub at BlizzCon, like they were going to announce something that just wasn't going to hit, and it wasn't really announced, or wasn't really detailed on what that was going to be, but that was kind of like the rumor. And it could have been for another game completely. It could have been for, apparently they're making a survival game. It could have been that. Maybe it was like really bad or something like that. But it was like some insider was saying that something was going to get put out and wasn't going to get received very well. And some people's obvious thoughts were like Cataclysm, but I think most people also thought at the same time that Cataclysm is getting announced no matter what. So I think people were mentally prepared to hear the Cataclysm announcement. So I never really, I thought it was a possibility that the insider or whatever may have been talking about Cataclysm, if that was the case, and there was really an insider like leaking that little bit of information. But I didn't really think that it was like a strong candidate. It was just like a possible choice. And I was thinking that, hey, maybe those leaks about the level 70 stuff is actually real. And I think in my mind, I was like, I think people will be excited for this to some degree. It's because it's just like, it's going to be completely new. If it's like a new expansion going in a different direction after vanilla. And, it could be bad, obviously. And there's all these concerns that come with could be new. We're going to be talking about concerns coming from coming from new stuff in just like, minutes from now. But, I was thinking there would be some excitement around something like that potentially, but so I thought there would be some excitement around something like that. But I was like, I think that might be the flub, is like what I was thinking initially, for sure. I was like, because the actual classic people are not gonna love the idea of like getting to 70. When that was leaked in a bunch of the discords that I'm in, like I'm in a bunch of classic discords, and people's reaction was like not the best. Like it wasn't necessarily like they weren't going to play it, but it was not what they were hoping for. They didn't want to have to level, because I think a main concern is that they felt like leveling was going to invalidate their progress, and what they really didn't want to do is like have to grind 10 levels out and then start with like blue green gear again, right? I think what a lot of these people are looking for is to like test their Naxx gear in new content. Like they want to take their bist out Naxx 40 character and toss him into some new challenge. And I think that makes sense to some degree. I think it's a little bit I think anything that would have got released like that would be kind of maybe not. I don't know if it would really hit the bar expectation wise. I mean, I guess it depends on what they were expecting. Like, if they were just solely wanting new content purely, then I guess it would scratch that itch. But I think it would probably get steamrolled, because if you're gonna make new content for a game like Classic, first of all, Classic is just not a super hard game, and second of all, you're not going to balance it in a way where you need like full BIS Nax 40 gear, right? So it's like, you're not really going to test your Nax 40 gear. You're going to be testing your Nax 40 gear in an instance that maybe is like slightly more difficult or tuned a little bit harder numbers wise than Nax 40, right? But regardless, I think that's what people were looking for. They were looking for content post Nax, and that could be perhaps not just raid content. It could be zones, but it was just some type of content post Nax, and it would definitely involve raiding to some degree. Wouldn't have to be all raiding, but I think that's the conception most people had for Classic Plus. That's like the number one thing people were asking for and were looking for. And I think they thought that if new editions were going to come in anywhere, it wasn't the complete end game. I think people were sure they were going to get stuff at the very end game for Classic Plus. Like, their conception of Classic Plus absolutely included a raid after Nax. But if it included other stuff that wasn't that, then it was probably other raids, or maybe like a new zone or something like that, or other raids that were maybe like kind of like a ZG AQ sort of style, where they're like catch-up style raids. Like, I don't think anybody expected them to drop another 40 man in between MC and Blackwing Lair or anything like that. I think they were expecting like another filler dungeon, maybe something to bridge AQ and Nax or something like that. Whereas like the other instances were meant to maybe bridge MC to Blackwing Lair, and then Blackwing Lair to AQ. So I think that's what people mostly had in mind there, and that was basically like everything that I would see would point to something like that. Just new content, right? New challenges, essentially. And that would be, and I think people thought that was going to come in a couple ways. Let's get back on our flight path here, but
I am forsaken.
I think they thought it would either come through a season and then get implemented into the main game, or what they might do is like drop the season as well as drop the the update on Era. But that would be kind of weird, because then I feel like you'd have a split between the start, people trying to get like the world first of the new seasonal of the new stuff, and then the season would be out at the same time. So they'd be trying to get like an Era world first while the seasonal stuff is out there. So I think that the logical way a lot of people thought it was going to happen is like, you'd have this new Classic Plus would be announced, and you'd have this new season, and then at the end of the season, basically next year, Classic Plus would actually drop, and that would be, you could go into that on Era, or you could go into that on the server that you are on, like the temp server. But what you would probably do at that point is just copy your character to Era and go through it on that, right? Or there was other conceptions where maybe the Classic Plus is the new season, and then what happens is like after that season runs its course, basically it becomes a part of Era. So I think there were like ideas like that. But all of that stuff is in a very similar vein. Like, you'll notice I did mention a lot of different permutations and variables there. So somebody could easily come in and be like, well, see, like, you're already kind of going off on like a bunch of different paths, and we can't decide like what, would have been like the best one or whatever. But in reality, I think a lot of those are very similar outcomes. Like, they all roads lead to the same thing essentially. And most people would be fine with some version of what I said there coming into the game. So I don't really think there would be much dispute. Yeah, and that's like the main. This is like the main point. I think that's the main thing everybody wanted. Now, moving on to the second thing, I think people wanted balance adjustments. Now, I want to make it clear that I think already, once you get to the balance adjustments stage, the amount of people that wanted balance adjustments is a lot different than the number of people who just wanted more additional classic content. So I think there's already a fall off there, right from the get-go. But I do think, and I will concede that I think most people did want balance adjustments. So like if 100% of classic people wanted more classic content, maybe you could say 80 or like 70 to 80% of the classic population wanted balance adjustments, right? And then when you start to talk about how radical of adjustments you want, I think that like the most light-handed adjustments, like that's where you're gonna have the most high agreement percentage, right? So it's like maybe even 90% of people supported like some balance adjustments, right? And then or 80% or something like that. And as you start moving that needle, and we start like talking about various different things, that's where we start to get like a variety of difference, and it really starts to drop off. Touching on that, I think that the main balance adjustments people were looking for, it would be like, so one of them would be to take the classes in PvE that were like overly simplistic and very almost nauseating to play, like kind of like rogue and mage and stuff like that, and give them some other tools to have more of like a sort of priority system or PvE rotation that was not completely brain dead, right? So I think that's and for mages you could argue again later on they go into like other specs that aren't as completely brain dead, but it's still kind of brain dead. Like it's not like an individual, you're not really doing much as an individual player even when you're playing Fire Mage. It's more the ignite coordination, but that I would consider to be a separate thing. So you know, I think they definitely wanted to make the classes more fun to play individually, or a lot of people wanted that. And I think that so it was definitely that, and then I think there was faction balance kind of was going to be the next point where they wanted more parity between the Alliance and Horde. And I think that if you were to ask people, do we just want to give like each other the others like special class, like give Horde Paladin and Alliance Shaman, I think the answer to that is more broadly no. I think that, you know, it's probably maybe close to half, but I think more than half would prefer that that not be the case, and they think that that kind of violates the I guess you could say like the sanctity of the game, or it would be like it would increase, it would give too much homogenization. It would inject too much homogenization between the factions right off the jump, right? So I think what most people had in mind there is potentially some racial balance, but the problem there is that it's more of a class balance issue. So this thing of giving shaman like kings and salve was like, I don't know that people were really thinking of that at the time, because they weren't really thinking of things in terms of like Season of Discovery, where people would get like totally new abilities or runes and stuff like that. So I didn't see a lot of thoughts like that, but I think that people, my inkling was of what they were going to do, or like my idea for what they could do, would be to like rebalance shaman totems and basically make the totems kind of like group wide. You know, you could do other things as well, but the idea would just be that using totems in general was like a lot easier, and it would allow you to stack more kinds of totems, if that makes sense, to give, and the idea would be that like that would give Horde kind of like a power of its own. For example, like if you're in Molten Core on Ragnaros and you're a shaman, you're going to be putting down the fire protect totem, right? But the problem is your mana totem actually takes the same slot. Not only Mana Tide, but I believe the other one as well. So basically, like, while your fire totem is out, which is probably going to be all the time, because even if you're not in the tank group, you know, you're still getting like blasted by Rag and stuff like that, right? So you want to have the fire resist. So if you don't have that totem out, if you have that totem out, you don't have the mana totem out. So like what this would allow you to do is it would allow you to have both totems out and it could potentially allow you to have like Wind Fury and the Salve Totem on pretty much everybody, so that would fix the Salve problem. And then you wouldn't have Kings, but you would have Grace of Air as well. So you could actually have Wind Fury, Grace of Air, and Salve without twisting, right? So right off the bat, that kind of brings a lot more parity than there was, certainly, because a lot of people right now just don't get Grace of Air at all. Like, shamans that twist will do it, or sometimes people will twist on the pull, but it's nice just having it constantly. And if you change the totems, so only like, they're like 40-yard range or whatever, and they affect everybody, you could absolutely do that. You'd maybe have to change some of the totems, or make it so some of the totems didn't work like that, like grounding totem. I know I was talking to my guild, that was a concern. So it may not be like all totems, but some of the totems, definitely, I think if they would have made it like that, it would have introduced like sort of somewhat of a parity. You could even add like a new totem, potentially. You could add like a totem that gave something like Kings, but I think that it's okay if you don't have Kings because you have like Wind Fury. So if you have Salve and now you have the Mana Totem, right, it's not quite as bad. I think Horde's still the weaker faction at that point, but I think it's definitely closer than it is in like Somme and in 2019 Classic. And then Horde also tends to have like a lot of this sought after, like the hardiness for PvP, Will of the Forsaken, right? So you're going to have PvPers wanting to roll Horde potentially. You could also start to add, another thing people complained about was like the weapon skill, right? So you could add like a swords weapon skill to the Horde maybe on one of the races there. And then they have, Horde has Berserking and the Orc racial for damage and stuff like that. So Horde has some PvE racials, they have some PvP racials. And I think that would have been like pretty decent balance, to be honest. I think that's about as best you can do, and like I said, maybe adding in some new shaman specific things I think that's about the best you can do in terms of keeping the game very close to OG Classic, but providing that parity. And then also, if you combine that with, giving like mages something more to do, giving rogues something more to do, classes like that, etc. I think that would have been pretty solid. A lot of people would have liked that. And then I guess like the last thing, this is kind of moves like, I didn't quite include it in the first two. It technically belongs to the class adjustment part, but would be adjusting the memes. And I think, again, like this might be a step down in terms of percentage of players that were for this, but I think there's probably still definitely more players that were for it than against it. And I think adjusting the memes a little bit was something that a lot of people had in mind. I think that I would say that what I gathered from the community would be that like they probably wanted Paladins to get a taunt in Max. They probably wanted them to have something like Crusader Strike, to have Ret be not like a super meme. And then once you have those two things in, I don't know if they would have actually made significant changes to like Shadow Priest or Moonkin, but I think just them having more mana, like finding some way to get them a mana buff. And it could, like, my thought actually was like, you could actually just have a buff for those classes when they zone into a raid if you really wanted to do that, or a dungeon. I don't think they like doing stuff like that, but you could maybe come up with some thematic reason why they get a buff in raids, and I think that would be the easiest way to solve the problem, because if you start messing with mana too much, maybe you make the healers overpowered, maybe you make the priest overpowered in PvP, or the druid overpowered in PvP, right? So there's a lot of things you could kind of like mess up there. And I think it's easier to just do like almost like an instant wide mana regeneration buff for those sorts of classes that like really are made inviable by the fact that they are non-viable by the fact that they don't have a mana pool, right? So I think like that's what you could have did there to be safe. But regardless, I think people were kind of hoping for some changes for some of those classes in a PvE direction for sure, because a lot of the meme specs are kind of like functional and okay in PvP. But just to one degree or another. But it's really like PvE that they are super struggling. I think Paladin is like by far like the worst one. So like they may have actually had to get like the Crusader Strike because they just didn't have an ability. And then I think Paladin is definitely one of the classes that I think people thought should be able to tank from the original vanilla. It's one of the ones people try and make work a bunch that doesn't really work. And if you give it like a taunt and maybe like another ability or something like that, it kind of goes a really long way, I think. So, yeah, I think that would have been, those would have been great changes. And those would have fit very much in line with the actual theme of the game. Like, nobody would have gotten super upset. They would have been pretty, like, there would have been some people that would have been upset for sure, but by and large, I think everybody would have taken that season for sure. You know, it's like we take those. So I think that's like the main 2 or 3 things. I guess like 2 main things, and I split the class adjustment into like multiple sections. But like that's what people were really looking for Classic Plus. Some touching upon all those things in some areas, not making drastic changes. So basically it's just new content, class balance for the classes that were really bad in certain spots, like the memes, classes that had terrible rotations, and then maybe trying to fix the faction parity a bit to give people more of a reason to play Horde and have like the servers balanced out a bit. I think everybody would have been super happy with that for sure. And then, I think people would have been upset that Classic Plus was not announced. Like, if that wasn't Classic Plus. But, assuming they didn't have that expectation already built up, they would have just been happy with those changes. And then if they announced Classic Plus with those changes, like, they were going to continue development on the game in the Classic Plus style, with giving us a new raid to start, with giving us some class adjustments, etc., people would have been really happy. That would have basically been like exactly what people were looking for. And what we got was basically like an experimental season with massive changes, right? So I think that's why you're seeing a lot of the doubt for Season of Discovery. You know, I think everybody is going to play it. People are just skeptical on whether it's going to feel the same because a lot of the changes are so drastic. And I'm kind of going to just quickly go into like a couple of the reasons why people are scared, right? I think number one, it's like when I was thinking of changes for the game, I was mostly thinking of PvE changes, right? Like I said, PvE class balance. I even just said like give Shadow Priest and Moonkin like a buff that only exists in the raid. You know, that way it doesn't mess with the PvP. But instead, when they're adding all these new abilities, they can pretty much all be usable in PvP. It's not like the other versions of retail, where like they had that PvP only talent group, right? And like they're adding like a PvE only talent group to Classic. No, it's not like that. Like all these new runes can be used PvE, PvP, etc. So I think that's already going to just be annoying to people that are like really familiar with the game and want to play a game that is mostly similar to the other version, right? So like those people are already not liking that. But even if you kind of put those people aside and, you know, you start to be like, oh, well, it's going to be fun because it's all new, right? I think that there's definitely, you know, a chance that it's fun and stuff like that. But I think what people are concerned about is like the more variables you add to the game, the harder it's going to be to balance the stuff. And people have this thing where Classic WoW is like completely imbalanced, but it's really not that imbalanced. I feel like holistically, in the sense of a lot of the roles kind of balance each other out really well. It's just that some of the roles like hard counter other roles And like if you were to take like a dueling tournament, for example, and use that as like your metric for class balance, it would look kind of bad, right? But on the whole, when you consider this supposed to be like a role-playing game with people filling multiple roles and the roles all can't be the same, I don't think the game is actually balanced like that egregiously. And I feel like what people are concerned about, that there's going to be like a mega class or a couple mega classes that emerge that are just going to be not only just like, are they good in 1v1 or whatever, but they're just like dominating PvP as like a whole. It's almost like a Wrath of the Lich King Death Knight effect. You know what I mean? Where this class is just so strong, how it's released with the new runes and stuff like that, that it's going to completely dominate the PvP scene in a bad way. And then I also think there's just a group of people that, you know, they don't want all these new buttons into the game because, hey, they're just older and maybe they're slower, to be frank. And that's not being said as a pejorative or an insult. Like, they just want the game to feel slower. And while I'm not really one of those people, and like I'm fine with whatever they want to add into the game, like if you want to add more buttons, my view is like as long as they're good buttons, they like feel good to press or whatever, you know, you can add them. Like, I'm not intrinsically against them adding more buttons to the game. But there are definitely people, I think, that, you know, they are just looking to have that slower pace game where some of the rotations are not quite as complex as stuff in retail and stuff like that. So they're concerned because they're not sure how hard it's going to trend towards something like that. I don't think it's going to really be that bad, but I think that's the concern there. And they maybe would have been fine with some small adjustments. So you're not literally just spamming one button the entire time, but they're not really into like having to learn like an involved rotation to like play their warlock or whatever. And I think that's honestly kind of like a fair point, because you have to keep in mind that you are going into somebody's version of the game, right, that they've played for a while, and now you are making changes. So obviously if they liked that version for any reason, they're going to be skeptical of some of the current things you're doing, right? So kind of talked about the PvP balancing, we talked about the buttons. This is the other one. So like the rebalancing of the content is, I think, another concern. You saw this was kind of like an afterthought that happened very quickly after BlizzCon, even, where I think it was like after the first day this got announced, there was like a period where there was like a lot of turmoil. Weren't really sure like what the predominant opinion on like the subreddit and stuff was going to be, and then it seemed to be pretty positive, but there was like this concern that the game was going to feel too easy because of all the new abilities, specifically the open world. And I think that Blizzard, or everybody thought that Blizzard was absolutely going to, you know, balance the raids around having these new abilities, obviously, but they were concerned about the open world. And then Blizzard came out and said, well, you know, we're going to buff stuff in the open world, and they said we're going to buff the damage because we don't want things to feel like they're just bullet sponges. You know, they're absorbing all your damage and stuff like that. So we're going to make it so that if you overpull this stuff, you know, you're still going to die regardless. You're not going to be AoEing stuff down. And I think that like that will make a difference, obviously, and it'll probably make it so, yeah, you can't just like pull 4 things at once, maybe on every class, but it's still going to be the power you're gaining on like a single target. Like if you're somebody who's basically just killing one mob at a time, questing like the majority of the player base, you're going to notice a significant increase in player power relative to the world, is what it sounds like to me, based on how they're approaching the rebalancing. Because they're not they're obviously not going to go through and add new abilities to every mob or something like that. They're just buffing the damage. So I can't really see the world feeling more dangerous, to be honest. Like, I think this is going to be something where it's like they're saying they're doing it to kind of like, and they are doing something to their credit to kind of like, you know, they're kind of acknowledging the community, but it's not going to be a proportionate response. The runes are going to by far outscale the new content. And if they don't, it probably means that the buffs they gave to the mobs are too strong, to be honest. And people are going to be complaining about that, and they might have to roll them back. But like, you can't really, I guess my point is that like you can't really just buff mob damage and expect it to really fix this problem. You kind of have to give mobs like new abilities and stuff like that. So I think that's something we're gonna see like arise, where that's a problem for people, is the world just doesn't feel as dangerous, right? Because it's not, because you have all these new abilities, outs, stuff like that. Some of the utilities, some of the abilities provide is just like, there's no way that tacking on 10% damage or whatever it's going to be is going to be enough. And then I think there's a concern even with like balancing of the raids, right? Because we all know how powerful a lot of these abilities would be in the current vanilla content, and I think it's just hard to conceptualize what vanilla content is going to look like that's not the vanilla content that we already have. And I guess if you played the the raid at BlizzCon, you would have a better idea about this, right? About how it felt. But from what I've heard, is that the raid was completely stomped through and it was very easy mechanics. Now, they did mention it was in like contest mode or fun mode or whatever, so that's not the actual tuning we're going to get on live. But again, I can't really imagine they want people to be hard stuck progressing BFD for weeks at a time either, so I think that it is going to be pretty clearable. And that makes me wonder, like, how much more difficult is content that they're going to be adding. Like, how much of the new stuff is it really going to be able to take advantage of? Because you have to keep in mind that we also don't know how much content they have done. Like, right now, the only thing we know they have done is BFD. So, especially when we start talking about higher level content, more of this is going to have to be developed on the fly, essentially, right? It's going to have to be developed in the period, like the interim period between when the game launches and when that phase comes out, essentially, right? So hopefully they're kind of already working on stuff. They've been working on stuff in the 30s and 40s, maybe potentially even the 50s or something like that. And because it seems like every bracket is going to be like, they're going to try and make it like the new endgame. So there's going to be like something to do PvP and PvE wise at that level. And I feel like that's just going to be difficult for them, to be honest. Like, it's a lot of resources. You know what I mean? So, granted, I think like they are kind of working, like they're not working from scratch, right? It seems like they're redoing a lot of the instances. Like what they did with BFD, they changed it into like a raid, but it's still at core BFD. So we'll have to see. I think that's the idea with doing that, by the way, instead of adding new stuff, is that they can turn the content around faster. So it absolutely makes sense, and it still will be somewhat new, novel content. But I would be concerned that it's going to be meeting the challenge level that maybe some people think it might. Like, I think that some of the abilities are just going to... like, I think some of the abilities are just going to be too powerful for them to really balance around. Unless they want to make, like, really, really different game design decisions for Classic. But at that point now we are moving into, like, kind of like the territory of retail. So I don't really know if they'd want to do that. I don't know if the player base would like that either. And I think even at 60, I think 60 is the spot where they have the best chance of making it work, but it's probably the spot that's going to have, like, the least amount of time, if that makes sense, because they've also, they've kind of screwed themselves by doing this, in the sense that not only are people going to want at least one new thing of content at level 60, because there's no way you're going to have a new raid at 25, 40, 50, and then not have one at 60. Right? That would be insane. But even if you give yourself, like, even if you make it post-Nax, like we were saying at the start of the video, and you give yourself a lot of time to make this raid, the problem is you still actually have to be updating the other raids, and they've kind of already hinted and said that they will be doing that, so they've kind of committed themselves to doing that. So there is going to be, I can almost guarantee you, some type of mechanical change or tuning change, numbers-wise, to Molten Core, Blackwing Lair, AQ, and Nax. And if they either botch it and make it way too hard by cranking up the raw numbers too much, people are going to dislike that. If it's pretty much unchanged and they just add a bit more HP and stuff like that, and stuff lives a little bit longer, people aren't gonna like that. If they add like new mechanics, like, are they just gonna reuse some of the stuff they did for Psalm? I don't know if people really like that because a lot of people already played it, right? Are they going to do completely new stuff? How good is it going to be, right? So, because now they have to think of changes for these, like going all the way through to the next raid. So you're thinking like, oh, they have a bunch of time to like make the 60 stuff, especially if they have the 40 and 50 stuff kind of done. But it may not be that much time really, because they're going to have to do stuff along the way, as well as just dealing with the game itself being live and like, maintenance on the game and stuff like that. Maybe they have to do balance patches, etc., right? So I think they haven't really put themselves in the best position in terms of like, it's going to be crunch time for them. Like, this is not going to be we release the thing and then we're kind of chilling watching it, like they're kind of going to be busting ass. And then the weird part about it is that I think we're going to end up in the same situation where when Season of Discovery ends, maybe like what they'll do is they'll just launch a fresh normal vanilla server. That would be cool, because I think people have been asking for that. Maybe they'll even like do a progressive, like a server they'll announce it's going from like vanilla to Wrath or something like that, or a Kata, if that's like the new thing or whatever. But if they don't do that, I don't know that we're gonna get like Season 3 right away. Like, they haven't been Path of Exile seasons, obviously. Like, we're not, it's not like Season 1 and then, like 4 days or a week or whatever, or even a month and then the next season. We've waited a while for this, and I think that we're gonna be waiting a while for Season 3 because they're going to be making Season 2 while we're in Season 2, which means that while they probably will be doing Season 3 stuff in Season 2 behind the scenes, they're not going to be able to solely devote their efforts. It's not like Path of Exile, like when they release a league, they're already working on the next one, and that's how they can meet that timeline, right? They're progressively doing stuff all the way through, so it's absolutely a concern. And just a little... That's pretty much most of the video, but the last part is just touching on the gating, the content gating. And, I think obviously this kind of makes sense in the sense that they're trying to give themselves more time, right? I think that's the main thing. And it definitely does help, I think, kind of keep the player base engaged for sure. They're definitely going to be able to just do more like releases and launches. So in the very least, even if people stop playing during these breaks, they'll come back for the next one most likely, and the server population will go back up unless people get sick and tired of this shit and they're like, fuck it, we don't want to deal with this. But I think that I think it's mostly going to work. I am concerned about people getting bored, obviously, because I think, having 2 months rating a 10-man at level 25 is going to be weird, because just a lot of the game is not unlocked at that point. People want to do end game stuff, whether it be crafting, etc. I know they're adding crafting stuff in and stuff like that, but it's not really the same. And I think the whole problem is that behind the scenes, or not behind the scenes, but like in everybody's mind, we all know endgame is coming at some point. So a lot of this, unfortunately, just does feel like it kind of doesn't really matter. Like, you can say, I talked about this in the other video, but you can say the endgame is 25 all you want. It doesn't really make it so. You know what I mean? People are still, at the end of the day, they're playing this game. They want a 40-man raid at endgame. They want to do the iconic raids. They want new content, I think. And if we don't, if like 75% of the way through the season we weren't at level 60, it would be a problem. So I don't think that's going to happen. But I think there's definitely the opportunity for people to get bored. And that is a concern in itself. And like I just said with the Molten Core Blackwing Lair stuff, and how they're not really getting a ton of time to develop the final raid or whatever, because they have to make adjustments to all those raids. It's kind of like the same thing where, like, even though they are giving themselves more time, by having these phases, quote unquote, where, you'll be level capped. The problem kind of comes in that they're developing content for each phase. You know what I mean? So all this development time that's being put into BFD, that's being put into the 20-man or the 10-man at level 30 or level 40, sorry, or the content that's going to be level 50, the PvP and the PvE content, like all this development time could have just been put into endgame stuff. Okay? And I honestly think that people would have preferred that more, and you still could have did a bit of a progressive release. I don't think it would have been as extreme as this, but you could have at least you could have locked levels. You absolutely could have, or you could have locked. You wouldn't lock them for as long, obviously, but you could lock like maybe certain level in 1 week, certain level in 2 weeks, etc., or maybe 2 weeks per band, or you could have just locked raids for a week or two at 60, etc. So you could have did it like that, and then release the normal cadence. So I think the problem with that is, again, they do want to make the adjustments to the old raids, right? So that wouldn't have given them a lot of time. But like I said, it's like all of these decisions, they seem like they're creating time for them to develop more stuff, but they're also having to develop stuff to sate people at each stage, right? So I think that there is like a net gain in doing it this way. Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't think so I think that they are probably gaining time overall, but I think that on paper and how they're talking about it, it sounds a lot better than it actually is. And they're probably not really gaining as much actual time, like development time, as you would think, because they are continually making content every step of the way. And that is kind of the concerning part. I think everything is just going to feel rushed for sure. I wouldn't be surprised if we get very similar versions of Blackwing Lair and Molten Core, for example. And maybe like some of the hard mode implementation stuff in AQ is added in Nax and stuff like that. Because, I just don't think they're going to have the time to like really fully flesh out all of these on an individual level and rework them. So that's basically the video. Thank you for listening, watching the rants. I'm still excited, obviously, for Season of Discovery, but I just wanted to make this video to clear up that whole kind of conversation where people are like, oh, it's impossible, to have a unified idea Classic Plus. It's not. I mean, they knew what people wanted. They chose to do something different. I mean, whether it works out or not we'll have to see. You can't judge it yet. We haven't played it. But it's definitely not what a lot of people were looking for or expecting. That doesn't mean it's going to be bad, but it's definitely possible to have had something come out that would have satisfied most people. I think even if they would have came out at BlizzCon and said, like, we really just were working on Season 2, but we really like the idea of Classic Plus, and we are announcing the fact that we are going to be investing and developing additional Classic content. We just don't have it for you yet. Like, that would have sated everybody, and people would have just took Season 2, it would have been fine. Even if they would have had to have done that in Season 3 or something like that, like, people wouldn't have cared. So it definitely would have been possible to please people. They definitely rocked the boat a little bit. I feel like this is what game designers tend to do. They have to try and reinvent the wheel. It's unfortunate, but we don't know yet. I don't want to be too negative, but it's just like, I don't know if this was needed, but I guess we'll see if it's good or not, right? And the main point of this video is just that it would have been possible to release something that everybody would have liked, and I wanted to highlight the legitimate concerns. People saying they're illegitimate, they're definitely legitimate for anybody that plays Classic and likes the identity of the game. So thanks for watching. Hope it was a somewhat balanced take, not doom and glooming it, but just giving you kind of a perspective so you can understand the other side if you're like one of these people that is really excited for Season of Discovery and just can't imagine why anybody may be skeptical, So that's all. But thank you for watching, and see you guys next time.